practices in our housing industry by offering down payment assistance to affected families. A study is underway, and your voice is needed to help document the extent of discrimination and determine who may be eligible. Complete our brief survey by January 7th at wshfc.org/covenant. Again, that's wshfc.org/covenant. Program funds will be available this summer, administered by the Washington State Housing Finance Commission.
Different rules apply when it gets this late. You know what I mean? It's like the after hours. Whatever gets you through the
night. Hello, I'm an unpaid spokesman for DJ Sotovaci. I'd like to invite you to listen to his free-form music show. It's popular music the way it was never intended to be heard. Whatever gets you through the night, late nights, here on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Whatever gets you through the night. Tune in to Real Estate and Money every Tuesday afternoon from 2:30 to 3 here on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Join your hosts Violetta Strash with John L. Scott Kent North and Tina Lombard with Guaranteed Rate Affinity. They'll help you navigate the waters of our volatile real estate market and offer you some guidance on how to make your hard-earned money work to make your dreams come true. Learn about current trends, get tips on financial matters, and have fun, interactive discussions about your home inside and out. That's Real Estate and Money.
If you or a family member are 55 or over and need nursing home level care, but want to keep living where you are, check out Providence Elder Place PACE. This program offers healthcare, housing, transportation, and recreational activities. There are no copays or deductibles, and it's covered through Medicare and Medicaid. Providence Elder Place PACE works to keep you healthy and in your home. Call 206-320-5325 or visit providence.org Elder Place. Providence.org Elder Place.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
You tried to Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. Happy New Year as well to everyone. I hope you had wonderful holidays, and it's good to be back for an exciting new year. What we do on the You Can Make a Difference show is we talk to folks who are doing things that make a positive impact on our communities and on in our world. And today, you know, I have someone on the show that I actually just met yesterday. This person, Larry, has a podcast that he interviewed me for yesterday. Called Nobody Knows Your Story, because he's got the curiosity bug like I do, and understands that everyone has a story. It's just about being interested to find out what that story is. And so I had a great time talking with Larry, and he also wrote a book called Nobody Knows. They Just Want You to Think They Do by Larry Camp. Please welcome to the You Can Make a Difference show, Larry Camp.
Hey, thanks for having me here. Appreciate being on the show.
Hey, Larry. Good to see you.
Yeah. It seems like we were just talking yesterday.
It does. Yeah. We ought to be pros at this by now, right? Yeah. So you have an interesting story, and you wrote a book about your journey and your story. And, you know, similar, we found out with telling my story yesterday on your show that we have some things in common about our background. But I'd like you to give a little, take us on a journey a little bit of your story.
Well, my story starts in Provo, Utah. So anybody who's listening that knows where Provo, Utah is probably knows that's where Brigham Young University is. And my parents were attending Brigham Young University when I was born. And if you know anything about that, then you probably know there's a 99.9% chance I'm a Mormon, or I was. So
yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of the way things started out. We moved to Southern California. I lived there until I was like 15 years old. And I guess the biggest takeaway for me during those years is just that I got started in baseball. And And that's been a big part of my entire life, that and the beach, because we were in San Diego, lived near the ocean, and just really gained a love for the ocean. Always wanted to go to Hawaii. And I had that as something that was on my bucket list, even when maybe it was on my pale list, because I was about 5 years old, I think, when I first had that idea of going to Hawaii. So so that was kind of my first 15 years. I didn't know that Mormons were that different, except that, as I got older, I thought about it. I was like, man, there's only like 4 of them in my whole school. So, and one of them was my sister. So yeah, we didn't have many of us around, but when you're a kid, you're just hanging out with friends and doing things, and we don't talk religion. I mean,
Right.
I couldn't even tell you what the religion of my friends were. And I don't know if many of them even knew I was a Mormon. So, yeah, I guess the biggest takeaway from being part of a high demand religion is that it's not just you show up a couple times a year or even just on Sunday. Our belief was a daily thing. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you start off your day with prayers, you do scripture study, you go to school, you come home. Sometimes, at least back in the 60s, 70s, when I was a young person, we had a meeting during the week called primary, where you'd go and, learn some more about Jesus and Joseph Smith and the golden plates and all that kind of stuff that they were teaching us back then. But yeah, it was just a very, very, I don't look back. I mean, some of my friends who've left Mormonism, they're all bitter because they don't feel like, they missed out on, drinking or doing whatever they would have maybe done if they weren't Mormon. But I don't see it that way. I still had fun. I guess because I didn't toe the line completely. I did a little drinking. I had a little fun. And, I was big into music. I've been to over 180 concerts. So, I've seen everybody from Michael Jackson to Led Zeppelin. So
Nice.
Music's been a big part of my life as well. So yeah, ended up going on a 2-year Mormon mission. Did that, graduated from BYU with a degree in sports broadcasting. And I did that. I was a sportscaster for NBC for a while in New Mexico. And, ended up getting married, because that's the other thing they encourage you to do when you're Mormon is get married and have kids.
Right. That's
So
how
we
we
did.
keep
We
this going.
followed that part of the program.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, the other thing that was a big part of that religion, and again, this is probably similar to your experience, and that is that you're not supposed to have sex unless you're married, and
Right.
so they encourage you to get married. And most Mormons get married pretty young, because if you meet somebody you like them, you want to have sex. So
Right.
I got married when I was 21 years old. I mean, I'm almost feel goofy to admit that now, but it's part of my story, right?
That's right. Yes. They
Yeah.
certainly did encourage that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that pretty much takes me up to getting married, and then I ended up getting out of broadcasting. I got into the corporate world. I ended up working. A lot of people might know of Jiffy Lube. I ended up, through acquisitions, working for 4 different quick lube companies, but I retired as the vice president of company store operations for the West Coast. And I retired at the age of 49, had time on my hands, spent a lot more time in Hawaii. We bought a condo over on Maui, and got into real estate. We moved to Maui, lived there full time for a couple of years, came back. And, I guess I tell people that we were priced out of paradise.
Yeah. Well, that happens, right?
It does. It's an expensive place. So, not unlike a lot of people, when you get into that kind of semi-retirement mode, because I'm still doing real estate even now, just kind of part-time, and I still manage a condo over on Maui. And, but I think the communications part of my life, being that was my major in college, I wrote a book. It took me like 6-7 years, because when I started, I wasn't really thinking about writing a book. I was just like, I enjoyed writing. And after a while I thought, I'm going to turn this into a book. So that's what I ended up doing. And that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that experience. And then, we found out about Mormonism, and just very quickly, our daughter was attending BYU Hawaii, and she came home Christmas break of her senior year, just a few more months from graduating, and said, hey, she had learned some things that they had been teaching there in her religion class. She had done a little research, and she no longer believed that the Mormon church was true. And that was kind of shocking for us. But unlike a lot of our friends, we looked. We questioned. We went ahead and took a deep dive. So when people say, what took you out of Mormonism? I say, Google.
Yeah. And they don't like when you question in organized religion. Yeah.
No, they really don't. As a matter of fact, when I was growing up, they always talked about free agency. You have the free agency to, drink a beer if you want to, but you shouldn't. But you have free agency. Now it's changed over the last, 20 years. It's morphed into obedience. And no more talk of free agency. Now you do it. It's our way or the highway type of thing. So, but we did the research. We realized after, it didn't even take a lot of research, to be honest with you. Mac, it was like, wow, holy shit. We're in trouble. We got to get out of this. And we did.
Right.
And we've been gone. We left in beginning of 2017. So it's been a while that we've been out now, but, and then I guess the other shocker for a lot of people would be in 2018, we'd made the decision to move out of our area because my wife had a hard time with the community. One thing, and you know this, being part of a high demand religion, there is a real community. It's kind of that us against the world mentality, especially if you're Mormon, because you're a pretty rare breed.
Yeah.
And when we left, she lost that community. And so she came to me and said, I want to move. Let's get out of here. Let's go someplace and start a clean break where nobody knows us. And so we came, of all places, and I told you this yesterday, we came to Southern Utah, which is so funny because I remember asking the real estate agent, hey, can we live here if we're not Mormon? He's like, oh, yeah. He goes, 20 years ago, I might have told you something different, but yeah, you're going to be fine. And it has been fine. But right after we sold our house and we were loading up our stuff, I had a softball tournament because I still play a lot of softball, and I was in Las Vegas, and I got a phone call from my daughter-in-law. My son had just been married 15 months previously, my second son, Dusty, and he had been rushed to the hospital. And before I could even shower and get out of my hotel, I got a call back, and he had passed away. So that was just, for anybody who's experienced the loss of a child, it changes you. There's no getting around it. You're never the same person. I'm an upbeat guy. I'm a glass half full guy. But that set me on my heels for sure. And the other thing, Mac, is, when you're part of that high demand religion, they have all the answers.
Right.
I knew where my son was when I was a Mormon. I knew that one day I'd be reunited. Well, hey, now that I'm a free agent and I'm not associated with any religion whatsoever, I don't know. And so now you get the nobody knows.
So that's where that title came from. Okay.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, here, can you see my hand? See my tattoo?
Oh, I love it. Nobody knows. Yeah.
Yep. So, and that's one tattoo. Here's another one, and it's upside down, but you can probably read it. That's my son, Dusty.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So
how did you reconcile that, Larry? How did you reconcile that? How did you and your wife, navigate that? I have several close friends who've lost kids, and I can't think of anything harder probably for someone to go through.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I can't either. And I've been through some tough things in my life. For a lot of people, finding out that your lifelong religion that you've given tens of thousands of dollars to, because as a Mormon, you're tied 10% of your income.
And time. So much of your time.
2 solid years as a missionary knocking on doors, trying to, convert other people for the corporation. Yes, they are a corporation. But so that would probably be the closest thing I could compare it to for people who were really, really zealous in their beliefs and they lived it. Then losing that or finding out that it's not true for some people is just, it's a huge, huge thing. Losing a child, it's interesting. This morning I looked at the picture. It's right here. I'm pointing to it on my desk. It's when my son was about 7 years old, and we're in one of those little photo booths where you're taking 4 quick pictures,
Yeah.
And I've got it right here. And I was looking at it this morning, and it just brought a tear to my eye. And it's been over 5 years. So, he was 31 years old. He'd been married, like I say, 15 months. And they didn't have any children or anything, and it just came out of nowhere. If somebody has cancer, like, my mom passed away from cancer. I had a brother pass away from cancer. It's coming. It's sad, but it's not a shock. But when
Right.
you get
And
a
you have
phone
time
call
to,
and
and you have time to say the things you want to say to each other. And yeah,
absolutely,
yeah,
and that's something I wish, and that's what I said to my wife. I wished I could have had a conversation. I wish I just, but from the time he clutched his stomach and collapsed, he was gone within an hour.
wow.
Yeah, had
Yeah.
so the actual, we didn't know what it was. That's the weird thing. They had to do an autopsy, and we didn't know for several weeks what the cause of his death was, and it was a spontaneous dissection of the right iliac artery. And to be honest with you, Matt, I'd never even heard of an iliac artery. I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and it was a freak thing. I mean, the doctors and the coroner, and I talked to all the people, and they said that it usually happens to an elderly, I say elderly, I'm almost to that threshold now, but 70-plus-year-old man, obese. And so my son was he was slim. He was 31 years old. So it really was a freak thing.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you and your wife though navigate that whole spiritual aspect of, losing a child and now not having that anchor where you feel like, like you say in the tagline of your book, they want you to think they know. Yeah.
Well,
How did you navigate that?
I think that I'll speak for myself because my wife has a little bit different take. I'm hopeful. That there's something, and my wife would agree with that. We're both hopeful. I think that she might just not be as hopeful as I am. Or, I mean, from the standpoint of believing, I guess she's more leaning towards atheism at this point, whereas I'm kind of still leaving that door open that there could be something. And I hope there is. I mean, I would love to see my son again, my parents, my brother, grandparents, friends. So as we get older, and this too, because we just lose more people. And so to be able to be reunited again, that's a wonderful thing. Is it enough to make me want to go and join up with another group? Nope.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. God is, my view of this is God is in all of us and in every living thing, so when people say they're going to look for God, I'm like, well, I think God's right here. He's, you and I are talking. I see God in you. I see God in my puppy. I see God, and so that, that's the way I walk that. I think there's some higher power, like you said, and as far as reunited, I'm hopeful as well, but we don't know for sure.
Nobody knows.
That's right. But, but we also do know that, once we've had that type of connection, like you've had with your son, I had with, my aunt that we cared for with cancer, like they're always with you. There's a piece of them that'll always be with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you asked about how it affects us. I mean, think about my wife. She carried that little baby for 9 months. Right. And so even though it just tears me up, when I thought about her and what, how she must have been feeling, and we weren't even together when we found out. She was in Hawaii because our daughter was giving birth to our first grandchild and had been born 5 days earlier. And so my wife, Judy, she was still there. I'm in Las Vegas at a softball tournament. My son was in Phoenix, Arizona. So we had to kind of navigate these things kind of on our own. And it was a difficult time for all of us, but as it is in life, you find a way to get through it.
Yeah. And one thing I've learned from the deaths that I've had with those close to me, and I wonder how you feel about this. You did say you'll never be the same. It does change you. And it's also, I think, hard to understand grief, to really understand it, if you've never been through it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And here's the other thing, Mac. When you write a book nowadays, they have print on demand. Right. And so what I did was, for about the first 6 to 8 months, I just kind of grieved and just was pretty sad. And then I, like a lot of times in my life, I started writing things down. And I ended up writing a chapter on losing a child. And I went back into my book and I added that chapter, kind of updated a few of the other ones too. and put in a bonus chapter on Hawaii of all things. Wow, what a surprise. But put that at the end of the book. And so now if you buy the book, you will see, I put some pictures in there that I didn't have in the first edition. And but see, that was also very therapeutic for me to do.
Of course. To
go through that process. And that's about the time that came out, I think, in 2019. And then in 2020 is when I started my podcast. And now I've done like 110 interviews. And I think it's good sometimes, Mac, when you find that I can't tell you how many of the people that I've interviewed have also lost a child.
Oh, yeah.
I interviewed a good friend people who become friends, but Melanie Merrill, she has lost 2 children, not at the same time, years apart. But just there's a lot of special people out there walking around, and we just don't know it because we don't know their stories.
That's exactly it. That's the key. Yeah. Yeah. And I love the whole title and idea of your podcast because, like I said, I have this affinity for curiosity and belief that it keeps us young and that everyone has a story. We just have to be interested.
That's right.
Right? And curious to find out. And so after you've done that many interviews about people telling their life stories, I'm sure you walk away every time, like I do when I do this, learning something. What are some things that stick out to you that you've learned from doing your podcast?
Well, there's a couple of things. One guy made this analogy, and I like it. He said, we all kind of are like boohoo for our problems in, my life or whatever. I didn't get the promotion or I got, whatever. And he says, if you were in a group of 10 people and you were all sitting around in a circle and one by one, each person stood up and truthfully told the problems and the issues that are going on in their life, you would be sitting there very grateful for the problems you have because we just don't know what's going on with the other people. And that's probably my biggest takeaway is that everybody has a story, but everybody has pivot moments in their life.
Of
and,
course.
When you pivot when you lose a job, you pivot when you have a child, you pivot when you lose a child, you pivot when you lose a spouse or a parent or a sibling. So these opportunities, and I call them opportunities. Sometimes they don't feel like opportunities at the moment, but if you can look at things a couple of different ways, you can choose to grow from the experiences you go through, or you can let them, take you down a dark path. And, and I mentioned to you, I don't know if you read that little bio I put together, but I mentioned to you that I have an older son, my first child, Crosby. And when his brother passed, it sent him in a spiral. He'd battled drugs, from the time he was 18 years old, but he would go through it like a lot of people who have addictions. He would get into a phase for a couple of years where he'd be doing okay. And at the time my son Dusty passed, Dusty was really Crosby's only friend. And I had to be the one to call him on the phone and tell him that his brother had passed. And I'm telling you, I had a 5-hour drive ahead of me coming from Las Vegas back to Phoenix, which is where we lived at the time. And I didn't even leave until 9:00 at night. So I just said to him, don't do anything. I'll be home in 5 hours. We can talk. But he was so distraught. And it didn't take long. And he just went right back into heroin. And right now he's incarcerated. He didn't, he doesn't hurt other people. He just hurts himself. And I guess I shouldn't say he doesn't hurt other people. Physically, he will steal from you. He would steal and get money because, that's what drug addicts do. Right. But if I can say that, and then in the same breath say, he's a great son and he's a great person and he's smart and he was all conference baseball player and just a great athlete. But he, when you get that fork in the road, he took the wrong path.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And no one teaches us in Western culture, especially men, I will say, really how to deal with grief in a healthy way.
Right.
Our culture tends to tell people, you have the funeral, you should be over it a week later and go back to work and everything, you act like everything's fine. And oh my gosh, yeah.
And I think that's something else I learned, Mac, was that for a lot of people, if they go to a funeral and they weren't close to the person, maybe they're there to support you,
Right.
or maybe it was a cousin or something like that.
Mhm.
Sure, they think about that person, but then their life does go on. And,
Right.
we're here, like I say, 5+ years and still affected on a daily basis. And that's
Of
one of the
course.
reasons I put that tattoo on my wrist, is that I want people to see it and go, oh, what does that say? And every time they do, I go, oh, that says Dusty. That's my son who passed away. And then it gives me a chance to talk about him. And I feel like that's honoring his life and keeping his memory alive. And I want to do that. So, but yeah, the podcast has been fun. It's been a lot of fun meeting different people from all over the world. I've interviewed people from Australia and Tasmania, from England, several from Canada. I mean, just all over. And I don't have the viewership, or I say viewership, listenership in a podcast that, because
Yes.
I'm not on YouTube or anything, but I don't have, I'm not Conan O'Brien or any of these guys that have millions of downloads. But I got a report from Buzzsprout or Spotify or one of these, I don't remember. And they said that in 2023, I was listened to in 43 countries. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. I know I look every now and then at our stats, even here on the radio station. We have listeners all over too in other countries. And it's part of the beauty of the technology we have today. I know, for us old guys, we look at this and go, wow, we can just like do this. And
Yeah. Look at me. I'm wearing headphones because I wasn't sure I could figure out how to make the sound come through my computer without my headphones on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's why I'm grateful for guys like Daniel, my producer.
Yeah. When I decided to do the podcast, I had to go to these Reddit podcast sites and ask questions on what kind of microphone should I buy? What kind of, I didn't know anything, but hey, you figure it out.
But hey, we're doing it. We're pretty hip for old farts. I was laughing, that sometimes I can call my 9-year-old granddaughter and she can help me fix tech issues.
Exactly.
Yeah. She tells me all the time, that I've got to get better at, she wants to play Minecraft with me. That's the game she's into. And so she tells me I need a tutor. So
yeah, that's a popular game. I know a lot of people play that.
Yes. So what are your goals? We only have a couple minutes left, but what are your goals for the future?
Well, I'll tell you, we have decided that there's a beer in Hawaii made by Kona, and it's Kona Light, and it's my favorite beer. And on their can, it says "One Life," right? And that's kind of the motto of my wife and I now. This could be it. This could be our only life.
Right.
So we are out on a daily basis, spending our grandchildren's inheritance. And
Yes.
we're leaving on a cruise tomorrow. And we usually do 1 or 2 a year. This year, in 2023, we went to New Zealand and Fiji, Tonga, Samoa. And so we're just out going new places, meeting new folks, and, just enjoying life. I still play a lot of travel softball. So I got tournaments in, Arizona and coming up this year in Nevada and Utah, all over the place.
Yeah,
usually
that's
places we can drive to. We played in Florida last year, but that was kind of unusual. We went down there for a big tournament and won our division.
Yay. That's awesome. Yeah. There's nothing better than travel. I always say it's one of the best educations you can get, to travel and meet people from different cultures and experience different cultures, right? It broadens our world. It expands our world.
Well, and not only that, Mac, if you watch the news, you think the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and you get out there and you meet people and you realize there are good people everywhere.
That's so true. And this whole nationalist ideology that's going around, our world is it's a global world now.
It is.
I mean, everything that we do affects people on the other side of our planet. We're all on one planet. We're not isolated any longer. Right. Well, let people know how can they find your podcast?
It's everywhere. I mean, Spotify, Pandora, Apple. You can also just go to my website, nobodyknowslarrycamp.com. It's on there. Yes. And all the episodes. And, but yeah, I do it because it's fun. This isn't something I make money at. I enjoy it. Right. And, I'll do it until I guess I don't enjoy it anymore. And I don't see that happening anytime soon.
And they can find your book on Amazon. So check it out, folks. Well, thanks, Larry, for making a positive difference in the world. Great to
thanks
chat
for having
with
me
you.
on. I appreciate it, Mac. It's been great meeting you.
All right. Have a great vacation.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
All right. All right, everyone, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week for the You Can Make a Difference show.